This past year, I learned how the supposedly the planets will influence human behavior, and that will manifest itself in the market. I got a copy of the book Astronomical Algorithms, which allows you to program where the planets are going to be based on a series of mathematical equations. And so I did a linear regression of where the planets are relative to the stock market and fit a curve to the market with historical data. And I thought I would see what is the most undervalued asset based on the configuration of the planets and the history of all the assets relative to the planets using the data that we have of historical data. Now, what's really scary is when we map the Dow to the astronomical data. Astrology says that the Dow has been overvalued for a very long time. And in fact, the last two times it supposedly crashed, it was only normalizing, right? So astrology says that by 1994, the Dow had already become overvalued. And in 2008, when we had the so-called financial crisis crash, that only put the Dow where it should have been. Of course, the Fed stepped in and printed all this stimulus. And so the Dow went above the trend line again, and then COVID hit. I don't think COVID was the only thing that caused the market to crash. The market was already overvalued and waiting for something to happen to crash. And then, of course, we printed, well, half of the money in existence today was printed since COVID. I'll let you read about that. Now, what is a good safe haven to go to when, now that the Dow is still overvalued by at least 50% or 100% or even more? Well, most people would say gold, but if we look at the astrological fitting of the gold price based on historical data, this is an even better fit. I am very surprised how close this fit is. If we were to take the correlation, this would probably be in the 95% range. The only time when it was not fitting so well was when the Hunt brothers were trying to corner the market. But astrology claims that gold could still go below 1,000. And the reason for that, in my opinion, is that gold is bought on leverage, which means that when this starts to correct again, you're going to have a lot of margin calls, and a lot of traders will be forced out of their positions here. But so right around 20, in the mid 2020s is probably a good time to buy into gold. But what are we going to do between now and the mid 2020s? I'll get to that in a second. Now, what about silver? Because silver is very undervalued compared to gold, right? Well, it is, but it suffers the same problems of margin, and in fact, it's already overvalued. Astrology doesn't kind of doesn't agree with the recent run-up since the pandemic. I got in right after the pandemic. I'm thinking about trading my silver for something else, and I'll get to what that something else is in a second. This is the Hunt brothers. Let's see what other historical event was here. This 1998, Warren Buffett tried to buy a good fraction of the world's silver. This is the debt crisis in 2011. So notice how every time we've gone above the orange line is because somebody or something was trying to corner the market in silver, right? Let's see. I can't think of any historical events involving silver, but notice the three times were all because of some weird historical event, right? And the price was not sustained. So what do we do between now and the 2020s when it's a good time to buy into gold or silver? Platinum. Take a look at this chart. This is the Hunt brothers here. 2008, palladium was very low at the time, and a lot of Ford Motor Company, the automobile companies were using platinum for the catalytic converters. Platinum and palladium are kind of substitutes for catalytic converters. And we're right on the trend line, and look at this growth between today and roughly 2040. So if we ride out this gain over here and then trade it for either silver or gold. Oops. These are all very large files. That's why it's taking a long time to load. Gold over here, right? Now, what about palladium? Because that's where all the news is, right? Recently, it hit almost $3,000 an ounce. I think we'll have another buying opportunity for palladium because astrology kind of disagrees. Look at the last time astrology disagreed with palladium going up. This was when the Ford Motor Company was trying to corner the market on palladium. So most of palladium is sold by Russia. And right now there's, well, at least a year ago, right? It's probably going to come back. There was a price war on the oil, and they're probably going to have to make up for the shortfall with selling palladium. I think the problem in the early 2000s was that Russia was selling palladium, but what does Russia invest in with the proceeds of selling palladium? Well, probably U.S. treasuries, right? And what happened in 2000? The U.S. was running a budget surplus, which means that treasuries were disappearing, right? So Russia probably held back on selling some palladium. The Ford Motor Company tried to corner the market, and you had this run-up. And then obviously the U.S. went back into a deficit, and we went into a recession. Not too many people were buying new cars, and that reverted, right? We'll have to see what happens this time around. I suspect the war in the oil prices is going to force Russia to have to make up for the shortfall with palladium. Now, how does this algorithm work? Well, historically, there were 7 planets in the sky. We used to think of the sun and the moon as planets, and then we had Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Now, all of those so-called planets, you could measure 3 different parameters of them, right? How far they were from Earth, and the angle they had to the sun, right? And also the angle away from the ecliptic, right? Those are called phi and mu. You could also measure their velocity, right? Is it getting closer to Earth, or is it receding from Earth? And the velocity of the angles. Now, sometimes the planets will actually move in retrograde, right? And sometimes they move up and down from the ecliptic. So you got 6 different parameters associated with each planet. And so you're literally trying to find a function that maps those 6 parameters to your stock price or your gold price or whatever. And then you got to find the fitting curve, right? The coefficients that make the curve the best fit, right? And for some reason, the astronomical chart fits gold almost to the T. Probably because gold is the one commodity that has been traded for the longest in human history, right? So everybody has it's kind of in our DNA to know when to trade gold at a certain price, right? That's my theory, at least. And then the Hunt brothers went maniac, and they did something that nobody in human history has ever tried, right? And I believe this. I'm going to buy into gold at that point. I hope to, over the next year, to trade basically everything I own for platinum. I really do. Because I'm young enough to ride out the waves if I'm wrong about this. Which is another reason why I like to keep my body young, right? If you're eating junk food or you're smoking cigarettes, that's your opportunity cost, right? If you lose 10 years of your life expectancy, you can basically take like a good fraction of your money and burn it, right? That's what you do when you smoke, right? Or do anything that might be unhealthy, right? Thanks for watching.